Tutorial number 1. Though we won't go just yet into too many details of French conjugation, let's have an overview of basic notions related to the verb. As you know, the verb is the central point of the phrase. It is conjugated, meaning that it varies along 5 criteria: le mode, le temps, la personne et le nombre, and la voix. We'll check out the 5 aspects of the verb's conjugation a bit later. For now, let's see how verbs are classified in French. Verbs in French are classified into 3 groups, recognizable when they're presented in their infinitif and participe présent forms, by their terminaisons, which means ending. Le premier groupe, which we'll see in lesson 3, contains most of the verbs you're most likely to be using during the day with your coworkers. It contains 90% of French verbs, all of which have a terminaison in er, producing the sound e at the infinitive, as in the verbs marcher, aimer, téléphoner, expédier, payer, calculer, for instance. Their conjugation, without exception, is really easy, as it's always regular. And by regular, I mean that they don't show any surprises in conjugation. So going through them will be a cinch. We'll check out how that conjugation goes later on, based on the simple verb aimer, for instance. Le deuxième groupe, which we'll see in lessons 4 and 5, contains about 300 verbs, which too are irregular verbs. Verbs of the second group have ir as terminaison in its infinitive form, producing the sound ir, as in the verbs accomplir, agir, ralentir, aplatir, atterrir, avertir, grossir, démolir, obéir, etc. We'll check out how that conjugation goes based on the simple verb finir, for instance. But remember something important. In its participe présent form, a verb of the second group has a terminaison in issant. That's the way the ending is when it's conjugated at the participe présent form. ISSANT, which is issant. For example, the participe présent of the verb finir is finissant, like in the phrase, for instance, Barbara parlait au téléphone en finissant d'écrire une facture. We'll get back to that, of course, the participe présent and all that stuff. Now, last but certainly not least, is the third group. We'll be seeing this one in lessons 5 and 6. Le troisième groupe's verbs are that of exceptions and irregular conjugation. So it contains all the other verbs, about 100 verbs ending in re, like prendre, about 30 verbs ending in oir, like recevoir, and about 30 verbs ending in ir, like sentir. Notice it contains verbs finishing in ir, like in the second group. So then what separates them from the verbs of the second group? Remember that we mentioned that verbs of the second group have a participe présent ending in issant, their terminaison being issant, like Barbara parlait au téléphone en finissant d'écrire une facture. Verbs of the troisième groupe ending in ir, they don't have a participe présent ending in issant, like verbs of the second group. Their participe présent ends in en, basically. This is a very quick and easy way for you to differentiate verbs in ir that are either part of the second or third group. Of course, there are many more parameters separating verbs in ir from those two groups, but for now, you can just differentiate them by their participe présent, which is a quick and easy way to separate them. We'll go into details much later. Verbs in the troisième groupe as I said, have a participe présent that just ends in en, contrary to the second, which is issant. For instance, in the phrase Pam parlait au téléphone cellulaire en venant au bureau. So there you have it. Venant is the participe présent of the verb venir. You wouldn't say Pam parlait au téléphone cellulaire en venissant au bureau. So venir is a verb of the third group, like partir, courir, dormir. You wouldn't say je rêve la nuit en dormissant. You wouldn't say j'ai oublié de verrouiller la porte en partissant du bureau, for instance.